My next review is on one of my favorite shows of all time. China, Illinois was a short-lived series on Adult Swim that I really felt should have gotten a fourth season. I know what you're thinking, but it's an adult cartoon, and I figured I'd expand on what I already do. I might do movies or shows that aren't cartoons in the future, but knowing the bias I have with this cartoon, I'll make sure I point out the flaws that could be on this episode. This episode is called The Perfect Lecture. And keeping that in mind, this review falls under the Fair Use Act of 1976, and China, Illinois is owned by Adult Swim. Without further ado, let's dissect the episode like a frog. This episode hilariously begins with the college students coming back after summer. It's hilarious how the students are snapping their fingers and looking brainwashed to have a fucking smile on their faces. The students, not in a fucking trance, are talking about the school in general. One student hears that the dean is a murderer, which is true. But the thing about that is that it doesn't fucking stop him from coming to class. Keeping noted that Pony, a senior intern, flirts with a freshman named Mac Attack and gets a date with him. Trust me, you'll know how this shit comes back around like a merry-go-round later. On a side note, with the side plot with Mac Attack, he finds out that Pony is a senior, which pretty much turns him off from her. Like, his dick pretty much shrinks after that shit, figuratively. Steve, the professor that hits on students, on a side note, I'm really glad they decided to go with the college setting instead of the high school, because then this show would be even more offensive. But anyway, Steve pulls out a beer in class like he usually does, like a goddamn savage. Then he embarrasses a student saying that he sucks and no one likes him just for bringing up he was drinking in class, which is not allowed in the first place. This really shows Steve's arrogance. Okay, that was a detail. You got me. I just thought it was a funny one, and the way he says it, it makes it funny than how I explained it. So check out the episode for yourselves. That's just my opinion. Like, this show isn't for everyone, and not everyone should check it out, but back on track. On the other hand, Steve's brother Frank, which is actually the total opposite of Steve, because Frank's kind of like insecure about himself and shit, but finally, I'm getting to the title of the episode. Please hold your fucking applause. Frank is having trouble giving his lectures, but there's a bunch of side plots for ADHD people like me to enjoy, and I'll get to the next one to get you off track once again. Baby Cakes is this 30-year-old that lives with his father that enrolls every year to be considered working on his future, but he's my favorite character, and he comes in the teacher lounge with one of these shitty but hilarious ideas. He creates a bunch of flavors for energy bars, including Barbecution, Chinese Chicka Chick, and Captain Ketchup. Even though his poor feedback for this idea from his peers, he still rolls with it. And when Baby Cakes rolls with an idea, he makes sure it fucking happens. He says he's gonna go to the vending machines company Perkaboo offices right the fuck now. Ha, one of my favorite lines, by the way. After Steve makes a remark about their own well-being, saying he's gonna stab them in their beds one night. Remember how I said Matt Attack's dick passed away? He gives her a shot, but he sees a gray hair on Pony and gives the excuse that he has practice. Sucks, he says. Again, it gets interesting. Just fucking trust me. The plot finally starts, and I'm not bullshitting you. We finally get to it. Steve told his brother to take the day off even though he had classes, but he comes back a goddamn wreck. Frank says he was up all night, so Steve kindly gives him his coffee and says just power through it, which I found as another hilarious line. Frank calls Steve the best, and he heads for his lecture. Now some crazy shit starts to happen after this. Some motherfucking lightning just breaks the window and lifts up in the air as you see in the photo. Of course, no one gave a shit about his lecture, but since everyone applauded for the fucking levitation in the goddamn air, Frank thought he actually gave the perfect lecture. Frank, being totally fucking hyped from his lecture, is as anxious as fuck to disrupt another professor's class and give the same goddamn speech again. Only nothing happens, and he embarrasses himself in front of her students and his co-workers. Nothing new for Frank. Mac Attack calls Pony old, even though she's like 22, and I'm coming close to hitting that mark in a few years. Then Pony overthinks things. Just leave it at that for now. On a funny note, Baby Case comes into the bar and says, "Jonah, I need my depression potion," as she pours his vodka in a pitcher. Not a glass, a fucking pitcher. Yeah, not some, a shit ton. Baby Case got mace at the front gate of the Perkaboo Company because he just decided to, trespass. That shit does it to you, And he thought he wasn't going to get any fucking repercussions at all, but Matt Attack was playing a baseball game on TV, and the announcer explained that he follows the same routine before every game because he believes in superstition. Frank then gets that idea that this is how he can give the perfect lecture again, by doing the exact same things he did leading up, but sadly, he's repeating terrible, I swear, a terrible couple days, which is so fucking funny for the viewer. He starts on the shit right the fuck now and goes to Chili Bees, which is an Applebee's ripoff. Frank explains to his brother Steve, which tagged along for moral support, that he really gets drunk and throws up and has 2 more margaritas after he fucking threw up. In Steve words, have fun repeating that shit. So Frank pukes on purpose to repeat what he did, which could be really offensive to people with eating disorders, but I found it comedy gold. Like Frank said, he's determined, and he goes, he does anything to get this shit. But once the waitress calls him mental for doing this last night, well, not on purpose, but he does it on purpose this time, and Frank asks for another round. Frank then had to take a shit by the side of his car, but every detail is fucking crucial, and there was a chick he shit in front of, and he needed to find her to take a shit in front of again. But in this case, he also needed to shit beside his car, but they didn't do that. Hey, it's a cartoon, right? So Frank literally finds out where she works and where she is and takes a shit in front of her in her workplace. Like, just takes a shit on the floor. Hey, wonder where Rick and Morty's coming from here, but what a gentleman, right? There's a kid in the store and the mother shields his eyes as his ass is on the flat screens as he screams, "Girl, look at this!" Pony continues her paranoid antics when she realized Sammy, an old professor, looked like her in the past. She's now worried that she will look like her when she's old, but no, she's worried that she's turning into like right now because she's really paranoid. But this is no typical self-conscious girl self-talk, fellas. Like, this is abnormal. She has trouble with her back earlier, but she was, just helping Sammy, like, in a rough place, and she hurt her back. She has a gray hair. She has some gray hair. Because dealing with the idiots on the show would fucking do that. Like, that makes more sense, right? Matt Attack turned her down because he's a fucking asshole. It all makes sense, but she has to take it, that she's actually turning old, and she's 22. Come on, listen to Taylor Swift, girl. But no, because she's getting old. Like, she's not. I feel like I'm motivating my girlfriend right now, if I had one at the moment. Cough. He then sees Trap Willie, the Free Willy prequel, and he cries his eyes out, but nothing more says about this scene. Like, nothing more said I want to say about it, because this scene I just thought the title was funny, Trap Willie instead of Free Willy. They said, there's a whale, can't wait to trap its ass in the movie, so, lol. Look, I know this is taking longer than my other reviews, but this is my favorite TV show, for God's sake. Meanwhile, Baby Cakes decides to replace all the energy bars in the machine with his. Keep that noted. Frank then gets mugged next. So a double whammy happens. Steve gets to slap Frank, and Frank gives him his money. The stupidity is just fucking great. Steve wants him to slap him again, but Frank warned him that I'd throw it all off. Frank then, being hyped up on adrenaline with his pocket knife, accidentally stabbed his neighbor who was trying to return his FedEx package. Frank then said that he stabbed him in the face, and yeah, he's gonna do that again. And he does! Oh. Frank then decides to jack off for 5 hours, but all the shit he did that night threw him off, and he was never able to climax. The last part was accepting the coffee from Steve and calling him the bitch, which R.A. kills him to say that, which is later revealed in the episode. Inside look, though. Frank ends up proving to Steve what he did yesterday, and Frank then wants to do it all over again. Steve tells him he can't, but Frank says, watch me. This time, they know what Frank is up to at Chili Bees, and they deny him a table. This doesn't stop Frank from fucking sneaking into the kitchen to get everything he needed to barf there. The girl he took crap in front of finished her shift, but that's no problem for Frank. Frank gets on the freeway like a goddamn madman to catch her. Frank crashes her fucking car, then takes the necessary shit he had to in front of her. This really starts a vicious cycle, but I'll touch on that later. I'm already getting my blood pressure up to critical levels, so if I die before I finish this, just so you know. But how do I upload it then? Shut up. Anyway, that's what happens when you improvise. Meanwhile, Baby Cakes tells people to stop being idiots, which is very hypocritical of him because he's a dumbass, but he still is trying to sell his bars. Let me rephrase that, though. He's giving them away for free and giving Perkaboo his profit money because he's a fucking idiot. Well, compared to how much Frank is being a moron, this episode is giving Baby Cakes a run for his money. I know I said it's just a cycle, but I'm gonna bring up Frank again. He was saying to his neighbor that he was off his meds and now he's straight and wants to apologize to his face, which then he stabs. That's my favorite part, no doubt. I laughed hilarious. I laughed so much when I saw that the first time, but like, you're a sick person, Billy. Well, you didn't know that yet? In the meantime, the students are really fucking sick of the same lecture happening 3 times in a row, and even floating at this point is getting old, and they still don't stop Frank from doing this. He's like, fuck that shit, I'm gonna do what I fucking want. Besides a song about Pony having a makeover, which in my opinion is a little disturbing to say the least. At the end of it, she ends up looking like Sammy as a senior. The joke is she's a senior in college and Sammy's a senior citizen, and I found that quite funny. Meanwhile, Frank barges in on Steve and his date and makes her leave over the commotion. He just comes in like, alright, you slap me, you know how it goes, you take my money. But when Steve won't slap Frank, Frank says that he can't even keep a girl in his house, and that gets him to slap him. Baby Cakes finds a Perkaboo employee and demands to get to the CEOs, or take me to your leader, he says. Once there, they actually like his products, or as Baby Cake says, the demands being demanding. So they give this idiot more encouragement to make even worse energy bars. Alright. Baby Cake's new lines of flavors are 9-volt battery, girl hair, and bathing suit area. And makes him go back to his depression potion. Yeah, stick to that potion. Back to Pony's self-esteem issue. Pony rides around in a wheelchair and has the same clothes just like Sammy does, which you realize she has 60 years to actually look like Sammy. So they're clearly just making a pun there, but I still don't mind it. That, a senior citizen versus a senior in college, I still think it's funny. But Frank's cycle stops when Frank finally can't take calling his brother the best anymore and rejects his coffee, stating that he is the best. A bunch of red lightning instead shoots out of his fucking chest and fixes all the books and windows, which ends the episode. Well, after he pukes over everyone, but I don't really want to explain that too much. Now for a rating, keeping in mind that Adult Swim isn't for everyone, I'd have to give the episode a 7 out of 10 for making fun of eating disorders. Well, not directly, but still it's a touchy subject that could offend someone. And just being a gross episode, could throw off some people in the wrong crowd. Like, I can see this, all these shit jokes and puke jokes appeal more to men than women. Not, assuming that girls won't like that, but other than that, I love the clever jokes and the plot's not staying on one topic, so having a lot of side stories that were actually funny really helps with the plot, and this is why it's my favorite episode, China, Illinois, of all time. And like for more reviews and subscribe for daily content. Thanks guys for watching. I appreciate it.